hit record real quick because I will forget. Isn't it weird that Zoom added this weird feature where she talks to us, you guys? It's so sweet.
Will I be able to hear people?
No, so they're gonna stay muted, but they'll put questions in the chat, and then we'll open it up for Q&A after you guys. But post your questions in the chat so you don't forget if you need to as we go along, and I'll, if we can stop, we definitely will. All right, let me share my presentation real quick with you guys. Video clip. Okay, cool. All right, you guys should be able to see us as well as my computer screen. All right, so like we said, this is not just about kind of editing photos. We really wanted to give you skills and tips on how to simply take a better photo. Because obviously, if your photo is better, there's really no need for editing, right? Or very little need for that at all. And so the idea of this is, yes, to give you some techniques and tools when it comes to Lightroom, but also teach you how to take a better photo and what is ideal, okay? So social media is our storefront, 100%, right? And how our store looks matters. That is our brand. It is what we build, right? And so when you walk into your favorite boutique at the mall, it's nice, it's pretty, right? It's presentable. It looks like a real store that you would shop at. If it was a hot mess, you would probably be like, I don't know if I trust the quality of the store or the stuff that they sell, right? And so how you present yourself, I think, with a little bit of professionalism. I don't think it's about perfection, but professionalism. I think it gives you a platform to stand on when you talk to your audience. And I think it gives you some confidence, right? You feel like, hey, I know what I'm doing. And those conversations go a little bit better. So the idea is to stop worrying so much about the editing piece and learn how to simply just take a better photo. All right. So the idea during this call, and we're going to actually show you. So I'm going to share my phone. He's going to walk you through the things and editing and all that jazz in Lightroom so you guys can easily follow along. But the idea is to take you from taking a photo, the whole process of taking a photo, all the way to making it Instagram ready. Okay. All right. So I'm going to hand it over for him, but these are some of the topics that we are going to cover tonight. And I will let him do his thing.
All right, y'all. So I'm Stephanie's husband. I usually shoot with cameras. This is my go-to. It does pictures and videos. And I mean, I've been shooting for what, 5 years, ever since Jaden was born. And I've just been upgrading my gear over the past 5-6 years. But at the same time, although I have like all these fancy cameras and all these lenses and lighting, I use my iPhone for a lot of pictures and I use my iPhone for a lot of videos because it is that good. Androids as well, but you got to know how to use them. But like Stephanie was saying, if you don't know what the exposure triangle is, it's not that big of a deal for cell phone photography, because with cell phones, you can only really adjust your depth of field, which is like your blurriness of the background compared to the sharpness of your subject. And you can adjust your exposure. And the most important part of that is exposure, okay? So to take a good photo, you don't need a fancy camera. You just need good lighting. Lighting is everything. Kind of like we have everything lit up here right now. And if I even open up the blinds, it's gonna cast like a shadow. Well, the sun's going down, but you gotta make sure that you have a key light. So in this case, our key light is the ring light. It gets pretty bright, so you can't overexpose easily. But if you know how to, and okay, let me break one thing down, because the most important thing you need to know about lighting and exposure is blown out highlights, okay? So is there any way that we can connect to your phone?
Yeah, we'll show you guys what that means, because if you are like me, you're probably hearing French right now, because that's how it was for me when he first started talking about all these different terms like key light, exposure, and all this stuff. And so we're gonna walk you through.
It's easier to show you.
I would have to, hold on one second. I'm gonna stop sharing my presentation and I'm gonna show you guys what he means by blown out highlights, and you'll be like, oh, okay, I get it.
And it's one thing that you got to be careful with, because a lot of people, mainly female, I don't want to say influencer type, but females on IG who are wanting to create like their feed and like make it like, I don't know, look more professional. they'll sometimes just brighten up the whole picture. And although like you're getting close, but you're at the same time, you're blowing out your highlights. And so like you in the highlights are the brightest points. A highlight is the brightest point of your picture. And that's how you want to expose. That's what you want to expose for. So on these pictures, are they blurry? Or will I just have to click them?
I don't know. Can you guys see that clear or is it blurry for you? It's clear. Okay, Brittany says it's clear. I see her on my screen, so she just gave me a thumbs up. All right, so before he shows you real quick, it's what he's talking about is like, you know, if you guys see a lot of influencers on social media, we often use this term, which I did as a neuro coach too all the time, was that, oh, I want this light, bright photo, right? We hear that all the time. Want a light, bright photo, go and get a filter that's light and bright. And so with that, yes, you do build cohesiveness in your feed, but it may not be the best quality of photo, right? You'll see that like sometimes, you know, the person's face almost, for me at least, right? I'm clearly not white and blonde. So if I make light and bright photos, I'm like looking gray, right? Or my hair looks a different color. Like I have orange tones in my skin. And so just kind of being aware of that and knowing like, yes, you could do that by far, but you could take a really good photo too. And he'll show you to reduce those highlights so you don't have like blown out qualities in your photo. Does that make sense to you guys?
And
awesome.
And I'm very particular about quality, just because I know good quality and I know bad quality. And right here, the screen is showing isn't that good of quality. So I'm gonna adjust, I'm gonna edit it for what I see, not in my phone, because it looks good in my phone, but over here it's streaming at a more compressed level. So I'm gonna look at this and I'm gonna tell you what it needs. So it looks really white. On the phone, it doesn't look that bad. So first thing I'm going to do, go into my light. And like I said, you don't have to follow any type of, like, don't just open this up and just start going, whoop, whoop, going down the line. You know what I mean? Because every picture is going to be different. So in this case, you got to look at the picture, see what you like about it, see what you don't like about it, see what you want to change. Right here, looking at the screen, I would pull down the highlights just a hair. So I'm going to go down, and the highlights are the bright parts, like I said earlier. So if I want to blow it out, boom, and then you lose detail. If you try to do a picture with blown out highlights and just make it real white, you're going to lose detail in everything. Okay. So I'm going to get my exposure back to 0. I'm going to turn my highlights back to 0. I'm going to go past 0 until I like it. And really, I don't need many highlights in this picture. Is that better? All right. Second thing, I'm going to pull my exposure back just a hair, just because I'm looking at the screen. So right here, I would say it's a little bit too dark. So I would pull it just barely under 0. Okay, so let's go. Can I type it in? Sorry, y'all, I don't really use Lightroom mobile. Okay, I'm gonna go right here. Okay, so next thing I wanna do, add a little bit more contrast. So contrast is gonna make your darks darker and your whites wider. That's a little bit too much for me, but there's a little bit too much dynamic range. And you know what? I'm not even gonna touch contrast. I'm gonna go down to my blacks and just pull my blacks down because I'm fine with the other exposure. So the main sliders that you wanna focus on, not exposure. I'll show you when to use it. Matter of fact, I'm gonna put my exposure back to 0 because that really isn't that important. That's just nitpicking. You wanna focus on your highlights and your blacks. Okay, if you wanna do that at the same time, simultaneously, you can just focus on contrast. Give it more dynamic range or make it more contrasty, whatever you wanna do. But if you want more control, just focus on highlights and blacks. Shadows as well, if you know what you're doing. So if you pull down your shadows, it's gonna make your shadows darker. If you slide it up, obviously it's going to pull up the shadows, give it more dynamic range. And now you don't have as much separation in the whites and blacks, but I'm going to leave that where it is. And since this picture really isn't that bad, there's really nothing you need to do to it. I took this for an example of what to do. If you want to make it pop a little bit more before you. So a lot of people do this. Let me go ahead and show you where people go wrong.
Wait, can I pause real quick? So when you guys are in light, so what I see often is like, for example, Jaden's got black hair, right? So if you have like dark hair, like dark brown hair or whatever, when you pull your shadows to the right side, it makes it like really silverish, bright, but it makes it like silverish and grainy. Have you ever seen photos that look really, really grainy? It's got that like ash look to it almost. Can you guys see that?
You don't want your kids looking ashy. Okay.
So I don't ever pull my shadows all the way up
There's a time and a place for that.
Yeah, so just a little bit depending on my photo. Like right now, see how behind me there's like the shadow going on? So if I took a photo and I wanted that shadow to go away, logically you pull your shadows up, right? So then that shadow kind of lightens up. And if I want it really dark, then I'm going to pull it down and then my shadow gets super dark. Does that make sense?
And you know what? I wouldn't have touched this picture. It came out fine. So I am fine how it is right here. Only thing I would maybe do, I really wouldn't do anything. You know, if it came out like this, there's really nothing to, I mean, you could just make it worse by trying to fix it. But here's where people go wrong. They go to color, they're like, oh, I want it to pop more. And they go straight to saturation. And y'all probably know coaches who do this. Like, it's just like a little bit too much. Leave your saturation tab alone. If you're going to do anything, give it a little bit of vibrance. Okay. Vibrance is very, very, very subtle until you start pushing the limits and you see how it gets like all orangey. But see how I have my vibrance all the way up? It still looks okay, but no one would ever use this picture. But if you take your saturation up, it's just like, okay, you look like an orange person that was like on the High C commercials back in the day or whatever those were. So touch vibrance, not your saturation, okay? So I'm gonna leave this picture alone and move over to some other ones, okay? This right here, I was talking about depth of field and focus. One thing that you do have control over is what your camera is focusing on. And then that could add to the quality if you use it correctly. I believe this was taken in portrait mode. And then what I did was framing my picture with Jaden in there. I tapped you can tap on the screen and hit what you want to be in focus. And so I tapped the bricks. So the bricks are going to be in focus. Anything behind it in the background is going to be blurred out. Okay. Obviously, there's no reason to ever use this picture. I just used it for reference.
So a great example of this is like, for example, so I take a lot of photos in front of like our garage door because it's like that barn garage door type look, right? And so I'm usually like, oh, I'll just place Jaden like dead flat, like against it, right? I'm like, oh, back up, like go ahead and just stand against it. But then what I do is I take away what he's talking about, that depth of field. There's nothing to blur if there's no distance between me and my background. Does that make sense, you guys? So let's say you're taking a transformation photo, or maybe you're just out with your family and you're taking a photo outside at the park and there's a lot of people behind you, right? Creating that distance is what's going to blur out your background and make you pop, and in essence, make your photo look much better quality-wise.
For example, see how there's no depth of field here. You can see the brick. The brick is in focus. Jaden's in focus, choking herself, whatever. And the background seemingly in focus, okay? But there's not much separation. It's not impressive. First of all, number one thing, I don't know what the brick, cool, foreground, whatever. You could use that as a tool, but Jaden is too close. Like Jaden said, or like Stephanie said with the garage door situation, she's too close to her background. Pull them. You got to shoot where there is distance behind them and then nail in the focus, okay? One thing that I hate about iPhones in portrait mode, if you see under her wrist right here, there's a part that I didn't catch. And to me, it's not that big of a deal. But that's why I prefer DSLRs and mirrorless cameras. You have full control over depth of field, but iPhones do an amazing job. Okay, so this right here, I wouldn't touch it. This is a quality picture. If you do want to add something, I will tell you this. Let me show y'all one thing that you can do. Add a little bit of clarity. Okay, maybe 6. You got to be careful with this because if you crank it up, all right, that just doesn't look that flattering. But if you just give it a touch of clarity, it's going to help the foreground stick out even more. Okay.
It like crisps her up.
Yes. And I still don't think y'all can see what I see because it looks really, really good in the phone, but
it's just
on the screen, it looks a little blurry.
It's my desktop, I think.
Okay. I hope so. Because this picture looks crispy. I don't know if y'all see the full quality. But this right here. Okay. So prime example, cool picture, cute little girl. Okay, now I'm distracted by what's in the background. Somebody's truck is back there. There's a whole bicycle. Like there's somebody's trash can out in the streets, like cool house, whatever. But when you do this, you're not distracted. Whenever you blur out the background and add that separation, you're not distracted by the background. Okay, you're focused on the foreground. That gets all the attention. Okay, so keep that in mind. Cute picture, impressive picture. Okay. Here is an example of blown out highlights, fresh out the camera. Okay. And the issue is with this, you see how there is no information in your highlights on her dress right here. You don't even know what kind of print that is because there's no information because you blew out your highlights trying to get a bright picture. And once you go here, there's like, y'all, you can't fix this because there's no information in this picture. There is no information behind this because it's just white. Okay, so no matter what you do, you can go to your light, pull your exposure down. There's no information. Okay, so check this out. You don't even know what that is. Okay, let me zoom out. Now your picture is just looking like trash because you didn't expose properly. So what I did right here is messed it up on purpose. So can I go to your camera real quick?
Just zoom out and you can click the one you want.
Huh? No, I was going to show them something real quick.
Oh yeah, you can.
Okay.
Let's see it.
All right, y'all, let's see. I'm about to take a picture of this bottle. First of all, what is the first thing I'm going to do? I'm going to click the bottle. It's going to focus on the bottle. Okay. Let me show y'all one really cool trick. This is a trick that I learned a while back. And I used it mainly for videos. If you hold it down, you'll have an autofocus lock. So no matter what, it's going to stay focused on the cup. So once you do that, you can crank up your exposure. But now the issue is we have blown out what? You can say it to yourself. Blown out highlights. Okay, so you don't want to take a picture like this because if you try to edit it, it's not going to edit anything in the white parts. Okay, so get it to a nice neutral exposure. If you like it bright, you can keep it about right here. That's fine. But if you're underexposed, this is when you can fix a picture. Okay, of course you don't ever want to take a picture like this. Okay, but you can bring back shadows. There's more information in shadows than there are in highlights. So keep that in mind. If you're going to expose off, be a little bit more so on the dark side because you have more control. But what I would have done right here, I would have gone into portrait mode. I would have scooted back, tap on my little thing right there. Boom. The only issue is I'm distracted by these whatever pins. So I'm going to pull this closer up. Boom. Now the pins are blurred out. Okay. Maybe let me get my autofocus lock. Maybe pull it up. Boom. We have a cool picture, separated background. I would even let the keyboard get in here because you know that, okay, you're in an office. Okay, maybe if I'm your husband and trying to take pictures, pretend you're typing. Boom, like you probably can get your nails done or something. Boom, I would take that picture.
Yeah,
like boom, like that. If I'm her husband, which I am, trying to set her up for some IG stuff, I got her right here. Okay, and maybe not focus on the bottle. In this case, I'm gonna focus on her hand. Look at that. It shows she's a hardworking mom in her office. She has a baby that's probably nearby because there's a toy on the table. I would actually get rid of that. You know what I mean? Like get rid of clutter. And one more thing, don't have your light in the background. So I wouldn't even take this picture in the first place. So, you know, y'all, I just want to show y'all a couple things, okay? Let me get back to this. So this picture, you can't save it. No matter what you do, throw it away, okay? Throw the whole picture away. Right here, you can save it. Why? Because the highlights have information and you can pull information out of the shadows. So if I want to lift up my shadows, okay, nice starting point. So we went from here to here, just a little touch. Don't try to overdo it all with one slider or you're going to look like an ashy ghost, okay? So maybe about halfway on the shadows, my highlights are fine. But this is when you go to exposure because the entire picture is balanced, but you need to bump up the exposure just a bit, okay? So I'm gonna pull up the exposure, pull up the shadows just a little bit more. And you know what I would do to this one too, just to make it interesting? How do you crop, Stephanie? Oh, boom. I would take the crop because no one needs to see that truck back there. So the way I took this picture, I took it in rule of thirds. Rule of thirds means you can break a picture up into 3 sections, kind of like a folding, brochure, okay? You either want to be on the right thirds or the left thirds. And it has the bars right there, if you can see. You see the grid? So it goes from, so Jaden is on the far right third, okay, of this picture. So just keep that in mind. That's something that it's just like more so, I guess.
I think it's eye appealing. So if you ever go to somebody's page, you ever notice that every photo, they're like dead center? It's like a center.
It's not interesting.
Self selfie type looking page, there's no variety in their page. So if you've heard people before tell you like, hey, take some photos close up, take some photos far away, take some photos where you're off to the side, right? It's that idea. It's more aesthetically appealing when you keep that rule of thirds in mind. That's something that he taught me like way long ago. And I was like, oh, okay, let me get a little artsy and like shift over.
It's really a rule of photography because let's say if I have her dead center, okay, the image is super, super flat. Okay, whatever, cool. If you have rule of thirds, you have focus on her and you have background in the back. So you got, if you're gonna do rule of thirds, make sure that you have something good in the other third, okay? In the other third column, if you whatever you want to call it. Okay, so let's say if I'm just doing this picture, I'm gonna crop it a little bit. Two things I would do. I already fixed my exposure. I still don't like the picture, but it's what I was given. I have my exposure kind of where I want it. I'm gonna set her on the thirds, and then I'm going to fix my horizon. I'm going to fix my vertical lines. Okay, so I'm going to slide down at the bottom, twist it a little bit, rotate until I get it level. Okay, and with this, I took it at an angle, so it's not going to be perfectly leveled. But now we have a picture that has nothing distracting. If you look in the top left corner up here, this is kind of distracting me just because I'm very, very meticulous about my pictures. But we have a cool picture. You could post this. And if you want to go back and give it a little bit more bump, take the highlights up. Oh, too much blown out, just hair. If you like that, you were good. But in this case, watch her dress. If this is the type of picture that you want, cool, there you go. I would prefer to have information in my highlights and shadows. So I'm going to pull my highlights down. That gives me room to bump the entire picture back up, okay? And it's still really contrasty. So you could pull down the contrast, add a filter, change the tint to it. But we kind of took that picture from just like dark to brighter and a better framing of the picture, okay? It still looks a little weird to me, but that's what we were given. I will keep it right there and maybe add a little bit of color, go down, don't do saturation, a little bit of vibrance just to give it some punch, okay? And if you really do want to change your white balance, make it more blue or make it more amber. I usually choose to go for the more, I choose a warmer picture usually, mainly because I have a darker skin tone and it just looks cool. But if you want like a fresh, refreshing look, you can go to blue, something cool. It's your mom's gone. Now, anyway, I'm leaving this picture alone, okay? I still wouldn't really want to upload this, but you know what? I took it from dark and whatever with stuff in the background to this, okay? So let me see right here. Here is an example of your husband trying, okay? This is your husband trying to make you look good, okay? He's trying to make the picture interesting. If you can look, the background, nothing interesting there, okay? But it is blurred out. So you can't see what type of truck this is. You can't see, you don't know if it's a Silverado or a Chevy Tacoma. You don't know if it's on 20-inch rims or 18, you know what I mean? Because it's blurred out. But what you do know is there is a little young lady right here, weird pose, whatever. And she's in focus. That is what you're drawn into, okay? So what I would do, I would actually work on rule of thirds. Before I do anything, the exposure isn't that bad. Let me pull up the shadows just a little bit. Okay, boom. So what I would do is I would crop this. And right here, if your husband is shooting your picture, tell him to give you some headroom, okay? Headroom, okay? So if you open this up, we don't have a lot of headroom to play with. I can, boom, there we go. Now we got a little bit, but now the picture is so zoomed in and I want to get the sky out, but I ran out of headroom. Okay. So right here, you could adjust your lines. Boom. We're in the left thirds. Let me see what that looks like. It looks unbalanced to me, but there's a lot more focus on her than the truck. Okay. And
So when he says headroom, just to clarify real quick, just make sure, like if you're having somebody else take your photo, whether it's a spouse, best friend, sister, daughter, kid, I don't know, Jaden will take my photos sometimes too. Just making sure they give you enough space so that you can crop and edit, and just, you know, prefacing, letting them know, hey, can you frame it to where you make sure my head and my feet are in the photo? I know I've had conversations with some other coaches, like they're like chopping off my limbs. Just let them know, frame it, right? And so I, you know, for example, like if I'm taking a photo for Roland, he'll be like, okay, go stand there and I'm going to show you what I want the image to look like. And so have your spouse go sit in your image and be like, take a photo of him and be like, this is what I want the framing to look like, meaning what everything I want included. And then swap places so that they know what they're taking a photo of and how it should look. And that gives you the ability to crop and edit, right?
Yep. It just gives you more to play with.
Yeah.
Okay, so right here still isn't a great picture, but if you think about this, it's either this or that. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with this, like at all. There's nothing wrong with this picture. If that truck doesn't bother you, I think this looks way more balanced than having her in the left thirds, okay? Because you have a blurred out background, it makes her look sharper. Yeah, there is a random truck there, so that's why you gotta watch out of what's in your background, okay? Anyway, leaving that one alone. Let me see. So we pretty much like nailed it. So this is a perfectly exposed picture. Perfectly exposed. There's no blown out highlights. Shadows aren't crushed. Blacks aren't too dark. This is a great picture. And this was by me tapping on her face before I took the picture. But this is probably the most important thing I can tell you, okay? If you look at, first of all, blown out, I did this on purpose, quit doing your pictures like that. Too dark, blown out, great. Even if this is just a starting point, you can go ahead and check this out. It's gonna take me 5 seconds. You see that light on the truck and that lamp? I don't need that in the picture, okay? So now I got my little girl. Boom, got her there. I'm gonna leave the light alone for now, because whenever I add clarity, it's gonna boost a little bit of the light. Let me see. Clarity is in the effects tab. Be gentle with it. Boom. Now I'm going to go back to my light, maybe boost it up just a hair, everything, total, add a little bit more contrast, and then we're good to go. I will post this picture. I'll pull down the highlights just a hair.
But when you have a better photo, obviously, right, you don't have to edit as much and be concerned about all these different features. I think it's important to note, like, well, you mentioned something about where the sun is and shadows and like. Yeah,
and that's what I was gonna, so this is the really important, if y'all want to get a little bit deeper into it, you gotta get your exposure down and you need to stop shooting. And I have an example of this. Everything is even because the background isn't blown out. There are no blown out highlights in the background. So it's easier to expose the entire picture because it has the same light source. Everything is even, there's even lighting, opposed to.
But she's in the shade, right?
We always shoot in the shade, okay? So the thing is, you can shoot out in the open, nothing wrong with that. But look at this, perfectly, I don't want to say perfectly exposed, but this is a great picture as far as exposure goes, okay? I wouldn't change, like this looks like I shot it on my camera. Not this one, or not with this lens, but this could pass for a mirrorless picture because I shot it in portrait mode. I blurred out the background. The exposure is super, super even. It's impressive, okay?
I think that like oftentimes we think like, hey, I don't want to shoot inside my house, so I'm going to go outside and take a photo, right? Great idea. But when you go outside, a lot of coaches I see will just get out there and then get in the sun. And that makes it, because they're like, oh, I need light, right? I need light on my face. I need a bright photo. I'm just going to go get out in the sun. The problem with that is it makes everything really harsh. You're maybe squinting also because you can't see, and it does create for that blown out feature because there's just light everywhere. So when you do shoot, she's standing in the shade, obviously during daytime, but the quality is protected because she's in the shade, you're in the shade with the camera, and nothing, like everything is even in terms of lighting.
The background and foreground have a consistent, even exposure. That's where you're going to get your best pictures, not when the background's super bright and the subject is dark, because you want to expose for your subject. Okay, so right here, I have to expose for my subject, which is Jaden. So luckily,
so obviously, see how the background is light?
No, yes,
it's lighter than her.
It is, but if you crop it, it isn't. So you got to think so this is an interesting picture because what I did was I tapped the background and I exposed for the background. Okay, but they were so close. You're never going to have an exact perfect match in exposure. You can sometimes, but even if it's slightly brighter, just pull down the picture. Okay, so right here, I shot a little bit underexposed just so the background isn't blown out, but I could crop it anyways to where you would never know. because if this is what you put on your story in a 9:16 aspect ratio, you're good. Nobody sees that house. Nobody sees her little car, all that blown out stuff. Okay. Think about your subject. Okay. And try to make sure that there's nothing behind your subject. And if there is, crop it out just a hair. Okay. So great piece. Still same thing. Really good. Really good. This one I wouldn't really post because see the blown out highlights and her face is really, really dark. This is an issue because if you look at the background, no blown out highlights. Okay. But the background is so much more illuminated than the foreground that we have an issue. There's no point to even try to edit this, y'all. And that's what I'm trying to like tell you, just get it right in camera, because if you try to go edit it, you got to get her exposed. Okay, boom, we got her exposed. Let me pull up the shadows. Boom, pull down the highlights because they look all blown out. And y'all, you just can't get let me crop it, you know, just to get, that doesn't look good. This does not look good. And one more thing, if you have a really dark picture, and you try to bring up the exposure, you're going to get artifacts. This is called noise. You don't want noisy images, and noise only comes from shooting in really low light situations and trying to bring up the exposure. Okay.
So have you guys ever been in like a restaurant maybe and it's super dark and you're like, take a photo of all of us, and then you take it and then you throw it in a Lightroom, you're like, I'll just brighten it up, and all of a sudden everybody looks ashy and grainy. That's what he's talking about. That noise is that grainy type look. See how she's like almost blurry in a sense. So that's what happens.
Like if you wanted to showcase your child and like, oh my gosh, my little daughter is so cute. If you're proud of your kid, post whatever picture you want to post. But if you have the option between this and this, kind of clear winner, okay? The better exposed one. But the thing is, we didn't do anything to this picture. We have not even touched this. We just did it right in camera because we had our exposure correct, okay? So exposure is everything. Lighting is everything. This is a picture. Sorry, I'm just swiping. I'm going to try not to swipe one more time because I don't know what's behind this picture. Okay, but this is a picture that I took in Denver, okay? As you can see, it's a pretty cool, moody looking, movie-esque picture. Not the greatest picture in the world, but this wasn't taken on an iPhone. This was taken on my actual camera. But if you can see, the background's blurry and the foreground is sharp. What is on her forehead? She hit her head or something?
Yeah.
Anyway, so see how, so this is what you kind of want to get out of camera, okay? You have a lot more flexibility with a mirrorless camera or a DSLR, but your phone can do the exact same thing, if not better. You just want to make sure that it looks right out of, like fresh out of camera. So can we go back to your thing real quick, your slides?
Oh yeah.
And actually, can y'all ask you a question real quick, just so I can make sure?
This is the chat. There are no questions.
Okay, good.
But I want to, before we go back to the presentation, because I don't want to go back to the phone anymore. I'm going to show you guys just a quick shortcut for you. So let's say you guys went out, you took some family photos, you took 4 or 5 of them, and you want to post them as a carousel, right? You don't have to manually edit every single photo. Like if you're taking it in the same spot, right? Or the same lighting. Once you edit one photo, you can go up here to the 3 dots at the top. You can copy the setting. It's going to ask to copy everything. I just click check mark. And then let's say this is the exact same photo that I want to apply the settings to. I just click the 3 dots one more time, and then I can paste my settings and it'll put everything I edited over there. Now I'm going to make sure though that photo still looks good. But if I take something in all the same light and I want to post a carousel of it, it's just like 3 different poses. I'm going to apply that same, filter, or not filter, but like all of those settings that I made when I edited the photo, and then apply it to all the images, which saves some time. Now, that is also the same way that you can create your own preset if you wanted to. We have mixed feelings about presets simply because here's the thing, it's not like a one size fits all thing, right? You can't apply the same filter to every single photo you take. It's just not going to look right. You're going to have different lighting in all your photos. Like, so that's a personal choice. Okay. Like that's totally up to you guys. We're not going to do like details on that, but you can copy settings and basically name your own preset, and then you'll be able to save it in here. Somebody mentioned the other day, oh, the preset button moved. Yeah, it did. It used to be all the way to the far right. Now it is in the left. You can hit presets and then you can, you know, pick or create your own. So, all right, let me get out of
that.
this.
Is very handy, by the way. And I'm about to end this pretty soon, but I wanted to yell at Stephanie for something, okay?
Is it that transformation photo?
No,
It was like
probably.
super grainy.
Hold up, y'all.
And that's a
Hold on,
prime
let's see.
example. I put a filter on it. That
Right
one
here.
there.
First of all, too blown out.
Yeah.
That y'all don't do this, okay? Don't do that, like back up from the light. So whoa. You know what she should have done right here? Instead of have the light, like see how everything about her is exposed. She's like a cardboard piece of paper. There are no shadows on her, okay? So it's good, like if that's what you're going for, do it, cool, whatever. But if she would have just angled the light, it would have added to her muscle definition. You know, it's like there's a shadow on the muscles, okay? So you could have made this picture work to your advantage if you would have just moved the light, okay? The exposure would have changed like naturally, but y'all, if you're gonna use the light, that's why I don't like ring lights, because sometimes like people are like, oh, ring light, I'm gonna stand right in front of it. Don't stand right in front of the ring light. Put it to where it contours your face, your body, whatever you wanna get a good shot of. So
What do you want to go back to?
just this, topics to consider.
Oh, okay.
We talked about time of day. Right now is a flawless time of day to shoot, okay? Because if you look outside, golden hour, either shoot right when the sun comes up or right when the sun is going down, okay? Because the sun is at a neutral level. It's not beaming straight down, casting harsh shadows, okay? Shoot, our time right now is what, 6:43? I could go kill it. I could go grab my camera, go even just my phone, go outside, take some crazy shots. Why? Because the highlights aren't harsh, because the sun isn't beaming down. So don't just, we did a photo shoot with your team in broad daylight, and I did not want to shoot at that time because like the sun was just, I had no flexibility with the lighting. I had no control over the lighting because there was just too much. And like I said, if you have blown out highlights, that's a blown out highlight is just a white part on your picture that has no information, so you can't edit it, okay? So make sure time of day is right. Do not shoot at high noon. Make sure that the highlight, like make sure that the foreground is the same exposure as the background, okay? Harsh shadows comes from shooting in harsh light, like the picture I showed you from Stephanie, if it would have been like completely beside her, okay? So harsh light or harsh shadows, nobody just wants like it'll make, it brings out your imperfections, okay? Which you can use to your advantage. But if you have harsh shadows, let's say I have a big nose, okay? So if I hit an angle wrong, my nose is gonna look huge. So I'm gonna make sure that that shadow is, you know, tame, but it's still there, but it's tame, okay? So watch your harsh shadows. That comes from the angle of the light that you use. Backlit. Backlit is whenever you expose for the background and then your foreground super dark and you try to bring it up, it gets really, really grainy. Don't forget about that. I would screenshot this if y'all haven't, this topics to consider page. Angles, rule of thirds. Have your, if you're going to do rule of thirds, make sure you blur out the background or make sure that there's something interesting in the background and make sure that the background isn't blown out so everything looks nice and crispy, just creamy, okay? So rule of thirds, super important. That's more of a technical term for photographers. Number one thing is a picture is boring if it's just the subject in the middle of the, if it's just me in the middle, that looks weird. No, like jazz it up, be over here, have like some nice art over here. You know what I mean? Like have something looking good. Like don't just have it boring, just like, here, how about the, like that's boring. Like that, what? Add some angles to that, add something back there. Like, see what I mean? This picture, it looks so much better just because there's more to look at. But what you want to do is confuse. I mean, you see the harsh shadow?
But you don't want busy, so it's a nice balance.
So what would you do here?
Right.
If this were a picture, snap it into portrait mode, blur out all that. So they know it's there, but they don't know what the book titles are. Okay. So they're just focusing on you. Okay. Let's see, staging. Exposure, how to adjust for highlights. Y'all, we would never do a Zoom call. What's up, y'all? I'm about to teach you about lighting. No, no, get your key light. But the thing is, so key light, I got to tell y'all this term, okay? Because there's a light right here, but it's soft, okay? So it's illuminating from this side, but you need something overpowering it. Okay, because you don't want the background to be the subject, because right now the background is more exposed than the foreground. We're the subjects, okay? So get your key light. The key light is what makes is what gives attention to the subject, the foreground, okay? So staging, exposure, focus, depth of field. Right now, it would be pointless to shoot in portrait mode because there's nothing behind us. And even though there is a wall and a chair, there's no distance, okay?
It's too flat.
It's too close. So if I want depth of field, I would shoot portrait right here, get real close, blur out all of that, okay? So just keep that in mind. If you want to add a little bit more, but make sure, check this out. See how that's blown out back there? Not good, not good, not good. Keep that in mind. I would not shoot with some blown out highlights behind you. And if you have to make the picture less interesting, do that, okay? But these are some of the terms. I could get so much more in depth, y'all, but I'm gonna leave y'all with that. And if y'all have any questions, ask now, just in case I never get to talk to y'all again, because I can tell you whatever you want to learn about photography. But sometimes it does come with some big words like composition, you know, like composition is just your staging of it, but that's what you got to compose your shots. And if your husband is here, I need to talk to him too. Okay.
All right, y'all. Okay. I did my best to tell him, I was like, look, we don't need something way over our heads because sometimes you speak French. I was like, I need it like photography 101. So that is like as 101 as he can break it down. I hope it was helpful. I know you've learned a lot of terms. It was a lot to digest, but take little bits and Nava's watching the recording. Yeah. So take little bits and apply little nuggets at a time, right? I think we hit home hard a few different takeaways for you. Seriously, get a tripod. Yeah. So if you don't have a spouse, like let's say you live by yourself in an apartment, right? And it's hard to just prop your phone up. First thing to do, invest in a tripod. They're super cheap on Amazon. You can either use the timer on your phone. You can get these little Bluetooth remotes to take a photo. You can use your Apple Watch. I've done that before. My husband travels and doesn't take any of my photos. Yeah. So if your husband travels and isn't there and can do that for you, you can 100% get a tripod to help it out.
My husband travels and doesn't take any of my photos. Hey, my wife travels and doesn't take any of my photos. Okay. All I do is follow her and Jaden and Jax around, giving them fire content for Instagram and social media. I don't have any pictures with my kids. Okay.
Yes, he does.
So I understand. Okay. There's one that you just took.
My husband is the worst thing.
And it was a great picture because I already had everything set like I wanted. I told her what I wanted, then she took the picture. That's all you gotta do. And we did it without arguing.
So that's why we gave the little tip of like, take the photo of your husband in the image first, frame it to what you want, and then hand the phone over and be like, hey, look at this. This is what I want to see when you take my photo. Now switch, right? And let him, and hopefully by then you've set your focus, you've got everything set up, right? Yes, it takes some work, but you kind of train them. He trained me in taking photos with these things that I don't know.
Yeah, she knows how to use my cameras.
How do you take a photo with an Apple Watch? Okay, so when you open up your camera, if you're wearing your Apple Watch, which I don't have mine, I wish I could show you. Once you open it up to where you can see all the little apps on your Apple Watch, go to the very top, you'll see a photo of a camera. If you click on that, it will, in a sense, show you on your Apple Watch exactly what you're seeing on your phone. And then you can either click shutter and it'll instantly take it, or I click the number 3 button that gives me 3 seconds so that I can like tap it on my watch, kind of move around or whatever, hold the baby, and then it'll take the photo for me. Now, yes, my phone is like on a tripod when I do that. And I usually do that when I'm like just doing a sweaty selfie after my workout to post in my challenge group. Jeanette says that's what I do. Yeah, 100%. All right. So if you guys have any last questions, I don't want to take up all your time. We really wanted this to be 30 minutes, but it is 6:51. So I want to be respectful of everybody's time.
And I said 15 minutes, but there's just way too much. So.
I told you.
Y'all, so the main thing, if you had one takeaway from this, you shouldn't have to edit your picture. If you have to edit your picture, you did something wrong. So just don't do anything wrong, okay? Kind of why, so whenever I shoot photography, and I don't want to get too deep, there's RAW and then there's JPEG. JPEG is a processed image by the camera. So if you know how to dial in your exposure, you don't need to edit it. You shoot RAW, which is the unprocessed file, just original, just straight, clean file. You only shoot that if you want to edit it at the end so you have more control. So there are benefits to having a camera, but you don't need one if you know how to use your phone. And if you do know how to use your phone and this camera, there's really no need to edit unless you want to add just a little bit of clarity, a little bit of vibrance. If you really do like the orange look, add some saturation. But then again, it's think about the rules, okay? Try to stick within the rules, okay?
Yeah. So do your best to take the best photo that you can, right? Sometimes you can't control the situation, but do your best. And then and then edit, you know, how you will. So for me, I try and keep it as simple as possible. I don't touch a whole lot of features. I always do the vibrance because I like my colors to just kind of pop a little bit. And then if I want a specific color to pop, right? Let's say we're both wearing pink or both wearing purple or something like that, you know, I can go over to the color section and I'll just click purple and I can change up the luminance or the saturation in that. Now, I don't always do it. No, it's not. I don't always do that, right? But I do, you know, sometimes do it. We sharpen a little bit. And then I do, you know, I touch that light tab probably the most. Planning content would probably help. Take a lot of photos in one day to save yourself some stress. Yeah, 100% agree with that. If you are somebody maybe that works full time, or if it's easier for you to do that, to batch content and batch take photos, 100% do that, right? I know some people that are like, look, it takes a lot of work for me to get ready and put on some damn makeup. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my outfit a few times, right? So Jeanette's on this call. I know she does this sometimes. Like, she's like, okay, today's picture day for the family. We're going to take lots of photos. I got all the kids dressed up. I'm going to put my makeup on and get dressed. And then we're going to get all our photos together. I'll put it into Planoly, and then I will look at where I want to place, you know, my photos within my feed. That's something my kid's favorite.
Can we show you one last time?
Okay, he wants to show you one last thing, but he has like literally 2 minutes.
All right, that's it. That's all I need.
And then we'll wrap up. Thanks you guys for hopping on tonight. All right.
All right.
Oh, did I click the right one? Yeah.
One last thing real quick, okay? So instead of, whenever you start really knowing how to really sculpt your pictures, instead of just pulling up all the vibrance, go to your color mixer. And then you have HSL, which is hue, saturation, and luminance. And let's say with the blues, I want to make the blues pop, but just the blues. I'm only going to touch the blues. You could crank your saturation up, okay? Or you could pull your luminance down a little bit, okay? So I tend to pull my luminance down before saturation. And then if I want, add a little bit of pop there, and then work your way into the grass. If you want that grass to pop, crank the saturation up, pull down the luminance. If you want the grass to be brighter, pull the luminance up, okay? Lift it a little bit, okay? There's no reason to have your blues that blue. There's no reason to have your greens that green. But if you just want to touch a little bit of the picture, like right here, it looks dead. It looks gloomy. Let's add some life back into the picture, okay? Add a little beach look. One thing, do not touch the orange slider. Try to make yourself look tan. If you're not tan, don't do that. It's not going to work out like you think, okay? But yeah, you can use the HSL curves, okay? You can, once you learn how to do it, just don't overdo it. Just small tweaks instead of just pulling up all the vibrance, because maybe Jaden doesn't need vibrance, okay? Maybe just the blues do. So that's it. I don't have anything else to say with y'all. If y'all have any questions, ask Stephanie and I'll answer.
All right, you guys. Thank you.
Oh, planning content will help. Who said that?
Sierra did. I already talked about that.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, you guys, thank you for hopping on. I will share the recording with all the teams that are on here. I hope this was helpful. If you have questions, feel free to ask or just find him on Instagram and DM him. And he will answer your questions. But thank you guys. Have an amazing evening. We'll talk soon. Bye.
Bye, y'all.